Hey there, it is I, your proverbial boy Jeffy, here today in Copenhagen, Denmark. And today, I'd like to get things started off right off the bat, and that's because today's topic is a pretty complicated one, and that topic is vibing when you're out meeting people. You know, this is a topic that I get questions and emails about all the time, asking me to elaborate on this particular subject, because let's face it, it is pretty widely misunderstood. So, what is vibing? Well, it's got several different definitions. Some would call it fluff talk and kind of consider it to be no better than nonsensical filler. And yeah, that is true to a certain extent. There is that aspect to it, and we are going to discuss that at length, but there is a deeper, more ephemeral meaning to it as well. Before we begin, understand that all this stuff is based on the combined infield experience of many of the best guys that have ever done it. And this stuff's all been collated over a period of many, many years and distilled down to genuine, practical advice that literally anyone can use to see immediate improvements in their ability to meet people, their ability to socially interact, and to consistently generate win-win scenarios that lead to any outcome that they might actually want. So, like and subscribe if that's something that might interest you, because I'm bringing you the truth about this stuff every single week. Now, it's a well-documented fact that verbal communication comprises only a small fraction of your communication as a whole, right? In reality, we communicate mostly through nonverbal means. And one part of this are the so-called channels of subcommunication. So, vibing, what is it? It's simply a non-goal oriented conversation that's designed to simply enhance the emotional state of the participants. That's it. And vibing, while having a verbal component to it, it also sub-communicates many different things. And a large part of social intelligence is the ability to speak in this so-called vibe sub-communication. And the only way to improve this intelligence, to improve this understanding, is through massive repetition of social interaction. Now, this is, of course, why we always say experience is king. Because people without real-world experience, they frequently miscalibrate the vibes that they're sending out. And a lot of times, you'll see guys that miscalibrate their romantic vibe, and consequently, these guys come across as creepy, or desperate, or weird, etc., etc. You know, these are the ones who will start touching too much too early, or conversely, too little too late, and the interaction ends up going nowhere. But as people gain experience, they get a better understanding of the correct way to synchronize with the vibe. Now, sometimes even people with more experience, a little more advanced guys, can find it difficult to catch that vibe and sync up with it. And we refer to this as, you know, having an off night or stalling out where you can't think of anything to say. Typically, I feel that this is usually caused by filters of insecurity in the person's head. And these are filters that get installed over the years as defense mechanisms against ego bruising. And I talked about these at length on this channel before. Some examples of filters of insecurity would be self-monitoring, not existing in the present moment, having a need to impress other people, paranoia, etc., etc. And if these things aren't shut off, then it becomes nearly impossible to vibe dynamically with other people. The entire interaction is going to seem kind of stilted, kind of awkward. And like I said, even more experienced people can kind of succumb to these filters of insecurity from time to time. I mean, after all, they result from years and years of negative societal conditioning, and they realistically can't be expected to just, you know, quietly go away because you got a few nights out under your belt. But fortunately, there are ways to defend against these filters of security taking over your vibe. Now, one of these ways is humor, right? Humor is a great way to shake off those filters, start living in the moment. So if you're just joking around with your friends in the club, just clowning around, having a good time, that is almost guaranteed to change your state. Likewise, there's this idea that motion creates emotion. If you physiologically prime your state by consciously identifying like tension holding patterns in your body, methodically releasing those. Make sure your breathing is rhythmic. Make sure you're breathing deeply, not shallow. Loosen up, move slightly to the rhythms of the environment. Avoid stiff mannerisms. Put a little smirk on your face. Look around, ask yourself, wow, what's cool about this place? What's cool about this environment right now? Another tactic I like to employ is what we call the warm-up. Like when I first enter the club, I'll approach several groups of people that I have literally zero vested interest in talking to. Like people I would normally have zero motivation to approach. Why? Because then there's no stakes. Doesn't matter. So this helps me get into a talkative mood where I'm more externally centered, and as such, I'm able to pick up better on the vibe. So now that we've discussed some of the more esoteric aspects of vibing, let's get down to the brass tacks and examine some of the technical nuts and bolts. As I said earlier, many people have a problem vibing. Why? Because they simply run out of things to say. And this is caused by, again, a lack of experience on the one hand, and on the other, an excess of self-judgment, an excess filtering of their ideas, because they've got this desperate need for it to be good, this desperate need to impress the people that they're speaking to, as opposed to simply letting go and allowing the things that you personally find interesting to kind of float up to the surface of your mind, and then you just express them very freely. So let's talk about a couple practical points to remember. First off, don't talk about any one thing too long, and try to smoothly segue from one topic to the next. Understand that this whole vibing process is largely one of topic association, right? I always tell people, free association is the biggest tool in your vibing toolkit. And one thing that'll help you is to go out and challenge yourself in any conversation to find either a story or an interesting bit of information, an anecdote, or even something remotely or tangentially related to the topic at hand, and then just go and vibe off that. So a great exercise that you can play is the association game, where, for example, if I say the word elephant, you'd have to come up with a story that relates to this. Now, you might be watching this, you're thinking, elephant, I'm kind of stumped. There's nothing that I can think of that relates to elephants. Well, that's obviously not true. That's obviously ridiculous. Like right off the top of my head, thinking right now, there's elephant, ivory, Africa, hunting, tusks, zoos, the Republican Party, Dumbo, Never Forgets, circus, peanuts, safari, wild animals. Now, if you can't think of anything to say relating to any of those topics, then you got to work on your creative capabilities. And this is one reason why people like artists and musicians or writers, actors, why these people are often so good at social interaction, because they've got wildly creative minds. They can talk about things for hours. You got to understand, people love folks who've got something to say. It's like, what is game? What is it? What does that mean? Well, put simply, everybody's bored, so give them something different to talk about, and then make it easy for them to go with you and not feel guilty or weird about it. So anyway, as you converse with other people, try to be aware of all these potential topics that you could spin off of. And again, furthermore, be aware of the ones that are going to serve your needs best. That is, the ones that are going to direct the conversation towards themes of connection, themes of intimacy, whatever the case may be that you're striving for. Now, another crucial aspect of vibing is the element of timing. So let's say you got some comment that might be incredibly powerful or hilarious at one point. This same comment might be totally worthless even 5 seconds later. And sometimes you'll see this. Guys will latch on to some topic that a woman is discussing because he's got this great remark, and then they'll basically stop listening to what the girl's saying. Why? Because he's just waiting for a break in the conversation so he can unleash his little witticism. You have to understand, a spontaneous, relevant comment will always be more powerful than even a great comment that's past its shelf life. And one big breakthrough for me was learning that, if I had some great comment and the person kept talking and just moved on to a different subject, it was very often better to just let it go. And I know from personal experience, this can be tough, especially when it's a real good quip. So it's a real killer comment, but it absolutely must be done if you want to keep in sync with the vibe. Otherwise, you end up looking try hard and you end up looking low value, for lack of a better term. So always use your always use your vibing skills wisely. Try to consciously steer the conversation away from negative topics like politics, war, your grandma's warts, and move them towards those themes that I mentioned before that are going to put them in the state that you want them to be in. Again, themes of intimacy, connection, etc. Remember, vibing is the most potent weapon you have in your arsenal of conversational skills. So take pains to develop it through diligent field work, and you will reap the benefits. Of course, it's going to take time. When I personally first decided to make that change and get this part of my life handled, I kind of floundered around at it for years without much success, like literally maybe about a year and a half up to a couple years. And it wasn't until I met up with some very gifted individuals in person that my personal game started to take off by leaps and bounds. So what's the bottom line here? Well, I'm sure that given enough time, I would have eventually figured most of this stuff out on my own. Not all, but most. But it turns out that wasn't necessary. And it's not necessary for you either. Why? Because there exists, conveniently, a shortcut. I'm of course talking about the Real Social Dynamics flagship program known as the Boot Camp. And in this live infield coaching weekend, we bring the full force of all of our professional experience, all of our professional knowledge to bear on your current sticking points, to like chemo them out of your existence. And this level, I'm being very frank here, this level of professional coaching, it is not available anywhere else. We were the first to do it. We've been doing it ever since 2003, and many people have tried to replicate it since, but frankly, again, none have come close. Now, a lot of the things I teach on the boot camp, these are things that people thought were impossible initially. We give people the experience of doing things that they thought were impossible. And that's where the freedom is. The freedom comes in when you liberate yourself from limitation. So find out when I'll be in a city near you, and I'll see you out in the field. Until next time, hang in there, get out there, and make the mids.